I believe your purpose is not the thing you do. I believe your purpose is what happens in others when you do what you do.
Welcome to another episode of the Spanish Guitar Mastermind. In today's episode, we're going to dive into a heavy topic, and that's how do we truly discover and identify our true purpose? Now, while this episode is dedicated to my music community, all my aspiring guitarists and professional musicians alike, it's also very relevant to anyone in any industry, in any phase of your life. In fact, I challenge you to listen to the whole episode and afterwards, re-examine your purpose and ask yourself some new questions based on the topics that we're going to be talking about. So today's guest is Jade Simmons. Jade is an amazing artist that originally was using her artistry and devoting her life to being a classical concert pianist. Now, she was playing on some very impressive stages and having an amazing career, but it wasn't until she had some divine intervention that she realized that that wasn't the true purpose of her life. So flash forward to today, and now she's helping thousands of people really discover and identify what their purpose is and remix their lives. So welcome to the show, Jade.
Hey, David, thank you for having me.
Hey, Jade. Thank you for being here.
I'm excited for the conversation.
So before we start really quickly, I just wanted to tell my community about how I was introduced to you and your message. And the only reason I want to bring it up is because I've come to a point in my life where I don't believe in coincidences when they're too good to be true or when everything just aligns too perfectly. So a few months back, my family and I were in Houston. We were at Lakewood Church, and you happened to be the guest speaker. And it was a surprise to me, so I was open-minded, waiting to hear what the message was going to be about. When I heard your message, I was just on the edge of my seat, paying full attention the whole time because your message and your philosophy just aligned so much with what I've been going through the last few years, especially post-pandemic, asking myself a lot of questions about my purpose. Just that whole philosophy about breaking out of the purism of classical music and opening up the doors to different stages, to different people. I was just totally connected with your message. So after the service, I ran down, picked up your book, and said hello, got to meet you. And as we might talk about later, purpose makes you do bold things. And for me, starting this podcast was already bold enough, and I just barely started it in January. And right away, I went to ask you if would you like to be a guest on my show? And you were really gracious enough to already be very open-minded to it. That's how it all started.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. And I'm so glad to know that, that day had an effect. That was my first time ever performing or speaking at Lakewood. And I've been in Houston for quite a while. So same with you. I don't believe in coincidence. So, I always try to imagine that the reason I'm on whatever stage is to serve a purpose for whoever's in the room, whether I've had any previous connection with them or not. As you said earlier, I'm trained as a classical concert pianist. The only reason I came to Houston was to go to Rice University, has an incredible music school here called the Shepherd School of Music, which I had never heard of as a young musician starting out. I thought I'd always end up living in LA, Chicago, or New York. Houston, Texas wasn't even on the radar. And now my husband and I can't imagine being anywhere else. And, I think it's a really important distinction to make. You talk about how I thought my early career would be on these very big stages. And then I realized purpose was different. I want to make sure people understand right now, this is not the conversation of an artist who didn't get what she wanted or didn't get what she was going after and then had to come up with some really nice euphemisms to make where she is sound good. So I was playing on the big stages. I've had the honor of playing at the White House. I was honored in a ceremony where I got to play at the U.S. Supreme Court. I played with orchestra, recital, all the things I've wanted to do. And if I had continued in just that path, I have no doubt that I would be in even greater places and on even greater stages. But there's something that begins to happen that if we're paying attention, lets you know, yeah, you could keep going in this direction, doing what you trained to do, doing what your parents paid a lot of money for you to do, what you went to all the fancy schools to do. Or you could also listen in again to what's happening around you and ask the weird, hard question of, might there be something more?
Where should we start off? I think the best place to start off is if you can help us by identifying what, in short, what purpose is and what words are confused with it. In your book, you talk about a lot of people confuse it with passion and a few other words that are thrown into it, like destiny and your calling.
Just to, answer your question in short, I believe that purpose is not the thing you do. And that's really hard for us artists to admit. It means that, David's purpose is not to play the guitar. It's not to host a podcast. My purpose is not to be a classical concert pianist. I believe your purpose is not the thing you do. I believe your purpose is what happens in others when you do what you do. So, congrats. I didn't take your guitar from you, right? It just means that your focus now is shifting. It's saying, when I personally play this instrument that a gazillion other artists also play, what is happening in my audience that's unique? Because that thing that's breaking out in the people in the seats is actually where purpose lies. So, purpose is this internal thing. It's an outbreak effect that's happening in the audiences that we serve, if we put it solely in the perspective as artists and musicians and performers.
And that's the part that's a little cloudy at first when I heard your message, because it's like, okay, it's not exactly what you're doing, but it is indirectly through what you're doing.
Yeah,
But so there's a few different ways that we could. It's not just, for example, with myself, maybe it's not just through the guitar. Maybe that's why I'm also doing a lot of these things I started, like doing the podcast and a couple other communities that I started to build, because I want to reach more people and
that's it.
affect people's lives. Yeah.
Purpose is connected always to two things, I believe. Well, first of all, I'm a Christian. We probably have that in common if we were in church at the same place. So for me, I also believe there's higher purpose, right? That we were put here for a purpose, born with a purpose. And I feel like we get to live the rest of our life uncovering that purpose, not discovering, not having to go find what purpose is, but really looking at what's always been breaking out. And the reason I say it's not only tied to the guitar or to podcasting or to whatever instrument you play, whatever art you perform, it's because purpose likes to ride itself out in a variety of vehicles over your lifetime. That's why David has permission to not only play the guitar, but he also gets to do what he's doing right now. And so when you look at it, you now will start to find, I think multifaceted artists have an advantage here, because instead of people saying you're all over the place, what's actually happening is that you're allowing purpose to ride itself out in multiple vehicles. The way we end up not being scattered and flaky and all over the place is understanding what that through thread is. So if I'd had more time with David, we probably could dissect that there's a very specific thing that's happening in his audiences, whether he's playing the guitar or whether he's podcasting, whether he's in conversation with family and friends. There's a unique aspect that's breaking out. For me, what I realized is whether I was playing the piano or ministering or writing a book, there was a unique activation that was happening in my audiences, no matter how long I was on stage or what vehicle I was writing it out in. There was some through threads, right? Like the audience was saying things like, man, I feel like I can do anything now. That became a very common thing we were hearing. A lot of people were saying they now felt like they had the boldness or the courage or the audacity to do the wild thing they sort of had an inkling they were called to do, but they hadn't given themselves permission to do. So I know that my presence gives people permission. That's a part of my purpose. But the through thread was this activation that before I got there, people had been sitting on things, wondering about things, second guessing things. And after I left, they were ready to finally move on it. So that's even different for me as a professional speaker. Even though it may be inspirational, it might be motivational. What it actually is activational. People do something differently after we encounter each other. So as we're looking over purpose, we're looking to see what happens when we enter the equation. And I think it's such a fun discovery. I always tell people to start with the people who know them best. What happens when we're in conversation together? With women a lot, I say, why do your friends come and tell you all their business? Right? Ask them why, and you'll start to hear some themes, and purposes almost always connected to that theme.
Something I find interesting about how you found your purpose is that you were actually living your dream, your passion. I mean, that's what you worked super hard to be a concert pianist. And like you said, if I failed to mention earlier, but you reached already some of the big stages that you were striving to. So I find it interesting that you were able to deviate from that, even though you are already living the end goal and like and still aspiring for more within that.
Yeah.
So
I
I mean,
mean,
that's the challenging part to deviate if you're already living in one of your dreams.
yeah, I think the key word there is deviation. When we hear that word, it sounds like we did something we weren't supposed to do, right? Or we turned off of a path that we were supposed to be on and we took a detour or we deviated. But the truth is, what happened and what should happen is that we evolve into the largest version of ourselves possible. There's a version of me that can sit back and just play Mozart, Beethoven, and Chopin all day. There was also a broader version of me as a musician who could also play a little bit of jazz, a little bit of hip hop, create this. I have a love of rhythm and a love of hip hop and rhythmic music. And I started to blend those things together. I was also drawn to really rhythmic classical music. So Russian composers like Rachmaninoff and Prokofiev. And so even as a musician, there's a broader version of ourselves that we can be if we give ourselves permission. For me to operate outside of the classical music paradigm, which is a very strict, very traditionalist paradigm, even to begin speaking to my audiences, which was the first deviation, David. Going, oh, how did we say in the world of theater, across the footlights, breaking, what is it, the fourth wall, third
Mhm.
wall, fourth wall, right? Breaking that wall was a deviation. And other artists, this would have been 2008, 2009 is right when my career really started rolling as a very young classical artist. I started speaking to my audiences and it was like, who is this woman? And I would get bookings just because I was talking, because other artists were coming out, playing their instrument, leaving, right? Not saying a word. Now it's commonplace. We see artists talk all the time, but I
Mhm.
promise you, back when I was just doing it, I was one of only a few. And then I started to mix genres just a little bit. That was a deviation. They were expecting Mozart and Beethoven, and I maybe do some pieces by some African American composers, mix these things in there. And then, even in the way that I was speaking, I used to only speak about who Mozart was, who Chopin was. And then I began to speak about myself, what I was imagining for the audience, what I was dreaming about the music, what I was experiencing, what I wanted them to experience. That brought in the inspiration. So over time, it's like I was peeling back these layers of myself and allowing them all to exist in one space. And I think as artists, we're so good at, putting ourselves in a bit of a silo and just working on the music. And then we figure we must only share the music. But there's so much of us that should be shared. So even before leave the whole field
Mhm.
of music, there's a lot more we can be doing as artists that I believe impact our audiences way more powerfully than if we limit ourselves simply to the notes on the page.
I love that because I mean I think the main one of the main thing that differentiates us, especially like in a world like classical world or maybe even like some of the flamenco world that I come from as
Yeah.
well. There's a lot of like we were talking about when we met in person, some of that purism, and I mean that's great if somebody feels the call
That's
to want
that's
to stick to the standards and just uphold that tradition and do things how they were done,
it.
but if you want to differentiate yourself, people come to see us as artists more than to just see the music. And saw somebody mention it online the other day. They said they come to see our expression over our technique.
Mm,
So and then and then you're taking it a step further by saying, okay, let's talk a little bit more about ourselves and
yeah.
inject our personality and our stories into the audience to connect on a different level. I mean, I love that. That's a challenging part for a lot of us
It
artists
can
because
be.
we don't want to let that out or break that wall on the stage.
And again, I think you said it best, right? I mean, there are some of us who will feel a strong call towards the traditional aspects, towards upholding a certain standard. I think you need that. What I hate to see though is when there are artists who are sensing there's something else, but they are holding themselves to a certain paradigm they no longer fit within. The wonderfully scary thing about purpose is as you begin to uncover the breakout effect you're having on the audiences you serve. By the way, I consider myself as serving my audience. You begin to get very curious about why people are really in the room. We talk about reading between the lines. For me as an artist, it's about really sensing between the lines. I know they bought a ticket to hear the Mozart, right? But what else might I give them that they don't even know they need? And if you think just in commercial terms, differentiation or product development or brand development, that's what those brands are figuring out. What is it that consumers don't even know they need yet that we can create for us to keep it authentic? It's not that we're finding a gimmick to hook people in. We're
Hmm.
saying, is there any more of myself that I'm comfortable sharing that might offer something to someone else? So it's not that we get up on stage and we're suddenly making it all about ourselves or just talking to hear our own voice. We're saying, you know what, there's something in what I've lived, there's something in what I've experienced that I believe if I offer this to my audience, they're going to get something from it as well. And I think the differentiation, purpose begins to differentiate you. That's what it desires to do. Because I believe, we serve a God that makes all things new. And I believe we should constantly be asking what's next and what's new. And for me as an artist, I couldn't have it any other way. I mean, today I make the bulk of my career as a professional speaker who brings a piano with her wherever you go. You got to see some of that at Lakewood, but I'm on stage normally for an hour creating this inspirational kind of arc that uses music to drive my points home. That is not what I went to school to do.
Right.
If you told me, Jade, you can have back your early career of just playing with orchestra and recital, or this incredibly varied career now that has you impacting in rooms you have no business being in, I would never trade it in what I'm doing now for that original dream. So I
Yeah.
believe we have an original dream, and then I think if we're brave enough, we get curious about what else is there that I might have limited because I ran with only the original.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing that you crafted that whole new path, and
Oh yeah.
especially that it just kind of happened by, I mean, by, like we said, by coincidence, or by because you started needing to take those little speaking
By
breaks. And
circumstance.
but you,
Yeah.
yeah, by circumstance, and
Mhm.
that's where another one where you could say, was that coincidence or was that
Yeah.
the divine intervention, you know?
What is it like? Necessity is the mother of invention, right?
Yeah.
So, what David's referring to, and you see this in the book Purpose, the Remix, I think I tell the story in there, but I started having these really inexplicable bouts of stage fright and memory slips. And I've been playing since I was a little girl. I didn't have a lot of that coming out of school. And it was like a sudden onset where I was fearful and had never been fearful before going on stage. And in order to get through those little bouts of fear, I would catch my breath by telling a story to the audience. That's what caused me to start talking to the audience. Now, if I in the moment, this did not feel like some divine intervention. This felt like an awful bout in my career that I would have paid a lot of
Oh
money
yeah.
to get rid of. I even went to a couple of music therapists and learned biofeedback, and I mean, I did all the things to get over this random bout of stage fright. And I started talking to the audience. I was doing it, I always joke, to catch my breath. What happened is I was fostering a real connection with the people in the room. I thought up until that point, my purpose was to play the piano to impress audiences. So 99% of my focus was on the notes that were coming out and whether or not I was playing perfectly. I really wasn't thinking much about the audience. Speaking to them caused me to have this connection. And then it made it feel like we were all just sort of gathering together, experiencing the music. That actually, just that connection is what I really believe took away the fright.
Hmm.
But in the midst of that, David, what happened was I became known for speaking to audiences, and my bookings skyrocketed because I was doing that. So it wasn't the original intention, uh,
Right.
but because I had to do it to so-called survive, it became something that differentiated me, calmed me down. It also broke the defenses down of the audience.
Hmm.
And today I craft what I call, concert adventures, not recitals. And I don't plan out the concerts anymore. I have a bunch of music at my fingertips. I kind of decide what it feels like we need in the moment. I have, some pinpoints I'm going to hit. but I do a lot of improvisation, something I would have never done when I was in school as a classical artist. I put myself on the spot a lot. I bring people on stage who've never touched a piano to perform with me. We
Oh,
create
nice.
music on the spot based on their personal life story. We create
Yeah.
a piece of music, and nobody knows how it's going to turn out. And it's always wonderful. It's always wonderful.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. I love that reinvention of what people normally are used to seeing for a classical concert and just
Yeah.
totally flipping it around.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, the flip is everything.
kind of related to that, there's a quote from your book that I had here that I love, it kind of made me think about if that's one of the reasons why I didn't continue to go down the deep path of
Mm,
traditional flamenco and the pure side that originally intended. When I got into it, I was like obsessed with it, and I'm like, I want to
yeah.
become like basically a Spaniard and be like somebody from down there and be a
Yeah.
clone from somebody. One of the quotes that you had in your book was that purpose explains why you're great at certain things but never master other things.
Mm,
And it kind of had me re-examine the whole fact of maybe I wasn't meant to achieve a level of mastery in flamenco and be like another clone from the south of Spain, and my purpose was in music. At least I don't know, there's
yeah.
so many deviations of this. I'm cloudy on the thing, so excuse me if I'm not
It's okay. It's
being
okay.
but I mean, through at least in this particular department, I'm like, okay, part of my mission, I feel like, was to explore a broader spectrum of the Spanish guitar, so I could offer it to introduce different styles and introduce it in different forms to people, so that people could discover this type of music that maybe weren't going to originally discover the music because they didn't want to hear the complete traditional or
Mhm.
pure version of it.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to flamenco specifically, but I can speak to just the tradition of traditional music. There is such a sacred aura around it, which I think is beautiful. It's what attracted me to it. I still love mostly to listen to classical. Um, it's still the music I love to play the most.
Hmm.
Are there people whose Rachmaninoff is way better than mine? Definitely. Are there youngsters coming down the pipeline whose Chopin etudes are faster and cleaner? Yep, for sure. Am I ashamed of that? No. I think I used to be when I was trying to be that. So, those listening in, so that you don't take this out of context, nothing we're saying gives you an excuse to not be excellent. Nothing we're saying gives you an excuse to not try your hardest. But what I'm asking you to insert into that process is a question is, why am I doing this? What is it really for? Some of you will feel, yep, this, I'm supposed to be leaning strictly into this thing, going in this direction. So it's not that we're saying, oh, purpose gives you an excuse to not master. But purpose does give you a lens to look back and go, put it this way, if I had done only what I had set out to do, and if I had mastery even at a higher level, you and I would probably never be talking. I would have probably not ever played at Lakewood Church. Some of the places I play now are not concert spaces. It's NBC Universal or Hershey's or Nationwide. These are the places I play now, Zillow or QuickBooks. I would never be on that stage because my only credential would be Mozart, Beethoven, Rachmaninoff, Chopin. Today, as a creative artist, when I go into these business settings, I'm the one in the room with the monopoly on true creativity, innovation, reinvention. What does it look like to take something that's centuries old and reinvent? What does it look like as an artist to dig in to the level of mastery? What does it look like to extract themes and motifs and through threads and put that back into something and give it life? This is the stuff that corporations are trying to figure out. It's what we do on a daily basis. So
Hmm.
suddenly, in one place where I might have been common, I am picked up. Purpose comes with me. So does my talent, my gifting, and my skill. And I'm now put into a place where I'm a unicorn and have insights and thought patterns and mindsets that this area never thought to implement. And this is what the question is. It's not, am I giving up because I can't play, like the 12-year-old prodigy coming down the pipeline? Or am I giving into something that is other than what I thought it was going to be? And, a couple of things there, David. You said that what you're doing now opens up that world to people who might not have had access before. Purpose often does that. That's how we often know we're on the right track, because it's allowing us to break open spaces that were once closed.
Right. And I mean, that's something I feel very passionate about,
Mhm.
is letting other people into a world that maybe they would have never come to or approached.
I was going to say, I realized when you said passion, your initial question was about those differences, and
Yeah.
purpose and passion is one of the big ones that I like to differentiate. I spent a good time of it on the book, because I feel like a lot of times we're taught and told to follow your passion. And what I say is that, it sounds good, but that's why we can be passionate about something on one day and the next day lose all the fire for it or be burnt out. A lot of times when we're burnt out, we're following passion or chasing passion. And I say that passion is actually not designed to be followed. It's not designed to be a leader. Purpose, on the other hand, is designed to lead. We can trust purpose enough to follow it, because purpose actually never changes. The vehicle, right? Podcasting, guitar, painting, whatever else you do, speaking, ministry, those are the vehicles.
Hmm.
But if we find out that your purpose is to grant access to spaces that people have been blocked from, that purpose is going to come with you, whatever you're doing. Passion, to me, is designed to be a fuel. Now, it will fuel you in your purpose. The great thing about purpose is that purpose is a renewable energy. It actually fuels itself. It never runs out. I can be dead tired and then have to get on a stage. And that audience, we are exchanging something. I'm pouring out and they're receiving, which pours right back into me. Um, and there's an energy that I can't quite describe that kicks itself up when I'm in the right space. Now, I can also be in the wrong space, space that's not designed to receive me or only wants me to sit down, shut up, and play the piano. I actually don't go to those spaces anymore. But my team knows, don't book me any place that doesn't want me to talk. Because even though I can skill wise do what they're asking, this is skill, it's not purpose. So we only say yes to things that have purpose in them.
And that's a bold move
It
for
is a bold move. It
for
cost me a lot of money
yeah.
coming out of college. All my piano friends were playing weddings and every gig they could get their hand on. And I did that early while I was in grad school. And then I knew I wanted to be a concert pianist, period. I didn't want to teach,
Hmm.
and I didn't want to gig. And I knew there was a difference between a gigging pianist, a wedding pianist, and a concert pianist.
Oh yeah.
So I cut it off. I didn't do any gigs, and I only played whatever concerts I could book. And I also created a salon concert series. So that's where my entrepreneurial stuff started to kick in. And it was a commitment, because I was watching what looked like good money pass me by. Today, I really am blessed to have an embarrassment of riches in terms of having changed what would have been a starving artist kind of lifestyle into a very profitable company and business.
Hmm.
But it all started at the piano. It started at the piano, but it was making these what people thought were wild decisions, right? Or my music friends thought I was crazy to say no to gigs. But part of my business over the years has been to coach other artists into how to become more of a profitable enterprise. So purpose actually pays off at the end of the day as well.
Well, even before even reaching purpose, just that from a strategic point of view, I love that you just decided in your head. You said, "I want to be a concert artist," and like they say, burn the boats, and
Yeah.
don't think about taking that wedding
Yeah.
gig, and nothing wrong with it. It's also a fulfilling role for musicians to do,
That's it.
and you're
Yeah.
you're fulfilling other people's days and events and all this. But for you personally, you said, okay, I just want to be a concert artist, and I admired some of my fellow musicians that I know that are just concert artists, and maybe
Wow.
they teach on the side, but you were even more hardcore, and you're like, I don't want
No,
to
I
teach
was
or nothing,
hardcore.
and I just so you just
I told my mom, I said, I never want to teach. And she said, oh, I think you're going to change your mind one day. And I said, nope, I don't ever want to teach piano. And she said, here's the thing. She said, when you begin to master something and you start figuring out things for yourself, you're going to want to teach that back. You're going to want to replicate it. And I was like, you don't know what you're talking about. Here's where she was wrong. I did not ever teach piano. There were a few friends or master classes I would do as a concert pianist. I would go by the
Mhm.
university, do a master class. Where she was so wrong or so right is that probably the thing I love doing the most is teaching. It's just not piano. I love to teach now on mindset,
Right.
on breakthrough, on purpose, on ministry, on the word of God. I will teach all day. And she was right in that. It's just the vehicle wasn't what she thought.
Right. You're at the ultimately you're
I'm
teaching,
still
but
teaching. Yeah.
it just wasn't directly on the piano.
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
So for some of my community that they're just kind of lost or haven't ever thought about this, where's a good place to start? Like, what type of question should we be asking? Especially like maybe let's direct it at my musicians first.
Yeah.
Some of my musicians that are doing all types of jobs just to make a living, and they're not in a place maybe to say, okay, I'm going to drop all my
Of course.
my gigs because they can't afford it at the moment or something. But it's something that you could start asking yourself the question and
Mhm.
start directing yourself where you want to go or why you're in certain rooms, or
Yeah.
what type of questions would you start asking or suggest people start
I,
considering?
I always say to start with sort of a retrograde investigation of who you've always been and how you've always been breaking out. And it's why one of the reasons it's hard to do that is because we are very consumed, rightfully so, with just making ends meet, paying the bills. And so it'll have us in a lot of different places, stretched in a lot of places. Thank God that we have the ability to do all the things we're doing to put food on our table, but we need to make some space and time to at least reflect back. And you look at the audiences you perform for, whether it's been busking in a subway, right? Or official engagements, gigs, and concerts. What are people saying about how you make them feel when they are playing? You usually can find hints in the type of music you're drawn to. I mentioned being drawn to highly rhythmic classical music. Even when I was strictly classical, it was always the rhythmic stuff. And composers would hit me up because I could play all the cross rhythms. I'm the person who can do all that stuff, right? Like I love that because I was also in drumline and all these things. Rhythm was always something really important to me. So that began to distinguish me. What is even the aspect in your music that's distinguishing you? And you might have put it to the side because it seemed too specific or too narrow-minded, but pay attention because it may have to do with your corner of the market that has your name written on it. And then you want to look sort of esoterically at what it also might mean, right? So for me, rhythm, I was obsessed with, still obsessed with rhythm. I'm always drumming on something. I look at what I do today and I usually help people uncover the rhythm, right, of their life, help them march to a new beat. If they're leaders, what's
Mhm.
the new rhythm you need to be creating for the teams that you're serving? So I'm still doing all the same things. They're just now manifesting in a different way in my life. So you want to first look back, see what you've always been doing. What's the outbreak you've always been having? I would also, secondly, interview people who know you, especially when it comes to relationship and conversation. What is it that happens when I speak to David? What is it that I feel from him when we have a conversation? Ask people, what is it you get from me or you've noticed about me? And it's funny, the answers are always real. Sometimes you're like, I never knew that was a thing. Other times it's shocking. I've had people who consider themselves shy find out that others saw them as bold and courageous. And it's a really cathartic thing to uncover how you've always been affecting people and it might have just gone over your head. Purpose is hidden in the combination of those things, right? Like I started asking audiences or listening to audiences after shows when what they were complimenting me on. I love standing ovations. That's fun. That's all a lot of fun. It's great for the ego. But the compliment I love is when people don't say, uh, so they can say, Jade, you were awesome. Okay, thank you. That's nice. I love when they say, Jade, oh my gosh, I feel awesome. That's the
A
compliment.
little key, yeah, a little key
That's it.
difference.
Right. So David would start listening now for people to say, you know, I've never thought of this music quite like this. Or I've never heard it this way. Or I remember my grandparents would play this, but when you do it, that's what he's going to want to listen for because in there is purpose. And then that little nugget, I'm just running with this access theme here. Let's say he finds out they say, I never knew I could or had permission or could be in this space. He now looks at other things he might can create that create access Because purpose is going to be that. When you get invitations now, you're going to say yes or no based on if you can see purpose in that invitation, your purpose, not just
Mhm.
purposeful, but your purpose. So it's that, backwards investigation to see what you've always been doing and how you've always been breaking out.
I gotta say that's one of the most fulfilling things that I hear is recently I had a performance in New York, and I was doing a couple little clips of people after the show. I said, "Hey, you mind if I get some opinions and or what you thought of the show?" Because they were speaking well, and I'm like, I want to get some of that on video.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And I was asking, and one of the last ones that I recorded, she started using those words, and I didn't realize it until you just said it right now.
Oh,
Why?
yeah. It's huge.
But she said, she's like, you made me feel this, you made me feel so this inside. So started using all these expressive words, but saying like she was like literally pointing at herself inside her heart. And I'm like, wow, that's impactful, and it made me leave the place so fulfilled. And
It's so much. It's great. Like I said, standing O's and great reviews are awesome. Um, but there's something about you doing nothing but being who you feel you're supposed to be, performing the music you feel you are called to perform, and then watching perfect strangers have their own experience with it, stuff you couldn't have even dreamed up, and then I would challenge you to go back and listen to those clips again and listen for commonalities between what people are saying. Those commonalities tell you where you should sort of lean in. The only reason, so when I write a book now, if my purpose, I haven't said this yet, my purpose is to activate audiences into becoming the biggest, boldest version of themselves possible, the one I believe they were created to be, the version that is created to do big, bold things, right? So as I'm listening in my audience, I want to hear, oh, I feel like I can do. Then I say, what is it that you want to do? What is it you haven't been doing? So as a coach, what am I coaching people on? Very specific, doing the things you're called to do right now. What am I writing books on? Books that are going to make you go do the thing bigger and bolder. So my first book is Audacious Prayers for World Changers, because I felt like we were praying too small. So that book has to make you do what? Behave in a bigger, bolder way.
Mhm.
So it begins to give you direction on any project you take on. You know what the outcome of it should be. So now you know what book to write, what concert to play, what music to program, and there's a freedom in knowing that you are doing what you specifically can do very well.
Well said.
Thank you.
Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I know you have another appointment.
That's okay.
But I do plan on joining in one of your workshops.
Oh, good.
Or actually, I'm going to see if I could. By the time this plays, this next workshop will have already passed. But I know. Do you host these purpose-filled workshops?
We'll be doing more. We'll be
Or-
doing. We actually may do one coming up soon on differentiation. We talked about that a little bit, and I think that's something that can really be a benefit to people. There's an art to it and a process to it, and I love helping people get down to the most, the biggest, boldest version, but the most unique version of who they are as well. So yeah, they can learn more at jadesimmons.com. Whenever we have offerings, it'll be there as well.
Yeah, sounds good. I'll make sure to post all the links to your website and
Thank you.
Instagram and any workshops you have coming up for anybody who's interested. So
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for the conversation. It's great to be able to speak directly to artists. I don't always get to do so. So thank you for the opportunity.
no, I love it. I know your audience isn't just artists anymore
Yeah.
or music lovers. It's everybody. But I really enjoyed it, and like I said, I really connected with you a few months back at Lakewood, and
Yeah.
you're doing something similar. Where I'm starting to feel like that's part of my purpose is to mix in a lot of mindset practices in
Mhm.
the music community, because not a lot of
Huge.
musicians talk about this, and they don't realize at the end of the day, mindset is behind and any industry.
That's it.
Nobody really thinks about it, whether you're teaching music or you're playing music.
That's it.
So I found a lot of inspiration in that, and I hope to kind of follow your path to a little degree, and
Yeah.
with my own flavor and my own personality. So
That's called the remix. I love
in
it.
fact, if you would have told me 5 years ago would be hosting something like this and trying to share this with a community, I would have thought it would have been impossible, because I didn't like to see myself on video. I didn't like
Yeah.
to talk. I didn't like to do any type of any type of this
Yeah.
type of work. So just doing this is, there must be some purpose to this, because doing these type of things wasn't that easy before.
That's it. Purpose will stretch you. I think I say that in the
Yeah.
book. Purpose will stretch you, and you know it's purpose because it's not stuff you would have just thought up on your own, right? Usually, purpose will push you outside of preference, personality, preconceived notions, and then there you are. So, it gets me so fired up to watch people uncover this. And what I call it, you're in the middle of the remix. And if we're brave enough, we get to have as many remixes as we want. So I'm
Yeah.
excited for you and excited for your listeners
Thanks.
as well.
Yeah. Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you, Jade.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for being on. And like I mentioned, look for Jade Simmons on in the show notes. I'll have all the links, and I will see you in the next episode.